Hello, welcome to Frames of Mind, where storytelling meets insight, exploring the minds in entertainment. As a college student, I want to highlight the many different ways people can enter this industry, and I'm so happy to be here with my first guest, Kristen Lopez. Kristen is an amazing journalist and author and a dear friend of mine. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, so if you want to tell a little bit about yourself to the audience, about your work, who you've written for, and things like that.
Yeah, so I'm a freelance journalist, film critic, film editor, and author. I was the former TV editor for IndieWire, former film editor for The Wrap. I published my first book, but have you read the book for TCM last in 2023, and I'm working on a disability and film book that I just finished that will be out in 2025. And I've been published. Pretty much any place except for Vanity Fair. So Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Daily Beast, you name it, I've probably pitched them.
Yes, Kristen is the coolest person I know. The thing that I can't get over is that you hung out with Sebastian Stan a little bit. Like, I think about that all the time.
It's definitely probably the highlight of my year, probably the highlight of the last 10 years. Getting to go get coffee with him before a panel that we moderated. It was very, very cool. It felt very fancy.
Yeah, that is awesome. So, as you guys can hear, Kristen, I was going to call you Sebastian. Kristen is an accomplished film journalist, critic. And through my show, like I said, I want to highlight the different ways people can enter this industry because all of our colleagues, our friends, there's so many different walks of life, so many different ways we get into this business. So, I kind of wanted to start back at the beginning for you. How did you get into this industry? What was your college experience like? What were you studying?
Yeah, so I have a master's in English. When I went to college, I initially wanted to be a history major, but my mom told me, you're not Indiana Jones. There's no money in history, so you need to do something that you can make money. Which I decided English because there's always money in English, right? There's not. So I was in college. My first entertainment job I actually got at my high school prom. I was the movie critic for my high school paper, and what I was probably terrible at my job because I saw everything. And when I would write reviews for my peers, it was stuff that they weren't seeing. Nobody cared about the new Woody Allen movie or, an independent film. But my teachers did. They loved that I was actually watching uh stuff that was, stuff that they were interested in. And at my high school prom, a friend of mine had said that they had seen a listing for a site that was looking for a film critic. It was very small money. It was $10 a review. And I think in the entire time I wrote for them, I got one raise of $1. So I did that for far too long. And my goal always was is if I could see movies for free, I'll feel like I've accomplished something, which I did. And I spent a lot of time, doing free writing for far too long. And then eventually, when I realized as college was ending and I needed to find a job, I was like, well, I can always write, until I get a real job. So I started to freelance and write stuff and was slowly getting opportunities to interview people and to go to places. And I just figured I would do that until, again, a real job presented itself. And eventually, we're here in 2025 and I've discovered that this actually is my real job. So it was something that, as a disabled person, I could work from home. I didn't have to worry about, going to an office. It really was something that was kind of born out of necessity. And, I always figured that to be a film critic, one had to be, either a film major or have, some sort of big experience. And once I realized that, Roger Ebert was an English major and was not a film major, it felt very cool. Like I'm like, okay, I can do this. So yeah, it's been something that, started out as kind of something I'll just do for fun on the side and has now become something that, yeah, at this point I can't find a new line of work.
Yeah, I love it. You touched on a lot of different things I wanted to ask you about. First of all, talking about working from home, I'm curious if the pandemic changed anything about that because I got into entertainment journalism in 2022, so it was after I'm assuming a lot has changed. So, how did that impact the work from home balance?
Yeah, so I mean, I got my job as TV editor for IndieWire about a month before the pandemic started, and I worked in the office for about, I think, 2 weeks before everybody started working from home. So, I give IndieWire a lot of love and appreciation for hiring me right before pandemic. And being a TV critic actually was to my benefit because movies eventually dried up. And the film team at IndieWire would eventually have to come and come over to the TV side, and we were kind of all lovingly fighting over the same stuff now because they needed stuff to do and there was no movies. So it was definitely something that was not weird for me because I worked from home for the majority of my career. So, if anything, I thought it was better for me because I didn't have to commute to the office, which was nice. But I think it really did showcase too how people engage differently with film. There's still very much this concept that if you are watching a movie, it has to be in a theater and only in a theater. And I think we're still kind of going back and forth about what that means to watch a movie, and Hollywood is still definitely trying to figure out how to navigate how people consume movies in a landscape where the theater is not the primary place where people watch things. So yeah, I mean the pandemic, it was definitely a great time for me to work in the television space, but as I tell everybody, I was probably a terrible TV editor because I did not know a ton of TV. So when I got to my next job, it was more comforting because I knew the film landscape far better than television.
Yeah, it makes sense. And that's another thing I noticed the more I go on. Like in this industry, a lot of people are wanting to get into how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I start? And that kind of is the answer. You just have to start because kind of same thing with me. I had no idea what I was doing in the beginning and I just learn and try to practice as much as I can and you get the hang of it, like you've done accomplished so much and that's kind of I think the biggest piece of advice I hope people can take away from this show over time is realizing like we all just gotta you gotta just do the thing and it'll happen. I'm curious because we've talked a lot about how like, for you watching TV isn't as much of an escape because you worked in TV. So now that you've kind of focused on movies after that, did that ever reverse for you or are you still
Yeah, I mean, this last year especially, I had a very different relationship to film, mostly just because of external factors that were going on. The fact that I was writing a book, the fact that I was in a job that I wasn't happy in. So my relationship to movies, I tended to avoid a lot of stuff. I didn't watch nearly as much as I usually do. I tended to retreat to stuff that I had watched, so there were not a lot of first time watches. And so, it's definitely for me, I think over the last couple of months since I've been back in the freelance space, I'm starting to relearn how to love movies again. When it becomes your job, I know that people say, well, if you're doing what you love, you'll never work a day in your life, and that's not true. If you love something, you actually want to emphasize why you love it, and but when you realize, like in this industry, that there's a lack of appreciation and a lack of financial compensation for what we do, you start to feel a little resentful about the thing you love. So it's definitely been over the last couple of months that I've had to emphasize, like the gratitude of this, that this is something I get to do, and taking time to really balance what I'm watching and why. The good thing is that when you're writing a book, as I was, watching movies for a book kind of helped balance out watching stuff for the thing that I needed to make money. Right now I'm working on a book about a TV show, so thankfully I have the TV show to deal with, and I can go to movies, for other things. So there is this nice little balance of reminding myself, am I watching something because I have to or because I want to, and trying to fall into those modes.
yeah, for sure. I don't know how much you can talk about that book you're writing, the one about the TV show, but I'm very excited for that. But so you guys know, the first book Kristen was talking about is But Have You Read the Book? And it's about 50 film adaptations of books, of novels. It's a very good book. Recommend checking it out. And there's a lot of movies in there that I didn't know were adaptations. So, like, were there any first time watches from that list for you, or had you seen all of them?
Oh no, there was a lot of first time watches. I had never seen a Sean Connery James Bond before, which I think a lot of people would be surprised because that's such an iconic, image. So I got to watch Dr. No for the first time, which is fine. It's very 1960s. There definitely were first like Joy Luck Club is on there. I'd never seen the Joy Luck Club. I was very happy that I got to see it because it's a brilliant, brilliant movie. So I did try to pick stuff out of necessity because I had a very short amount of time to write it, to pick things that I knew very well, but there were unavoidably things that I definitely had to sit and simmer with for the first time.
Yeah, totally. I resonated with what you were talking about before this too, with like, this is something we love and getting to watch movies early. It is a huge perk, but at the same time, it's very quick turnaround. Sometimes the invite's like, this thing is tomorrow. So it's very like stressful, very quick. So I kind of found that happening to me too last year, where I didn't fall out of love with movies per se, but it was more like I was just kind of like stressed with the deadlines, that it's like the wonder of it was kind of like missing a little bit. And so like this year, so this is week 1 of school going into week 2, and over the break I just got to sit and do nothing. And so I watched a good amount of movies, which our running joke between me and Kristen is that I've seen nothing. So that's not true anymore. I've watched a lot of things. But I've kind of like gotten that back again, and I'm just like that Nicole Kidman AMC ad. I'm like, cinema, we love, what is it, heartbreak.
Heartbreak feels good in a place like this.
Exactly. um and speaking of Nicole Kidman, I wanted to talk about award season a little bit, because the Golden Globes were recently, and I love her film Baby Girl. That was one of the ones I watched over break.
I'm glad you love it. I wish I did. I
You
thought it
wish you
was
did.
fine.
You thought it was fine.
I thought it was fine. I
Fair
wanted
enough.
to love it a lot more, considering the subject matter and the genre that it's trying to take off, go off with. And yeah, it wasn't for me, but I know a lot of people that love it, so I love that they love it.
Fair enough. And also, are there any sort of underdogs this award season that you wish people were talking about more?
Yeah, I mean, I think, watching, and I've written about this just today, I watching Sebastian Stan win Best Actor for A Different Man. That's the movie I am still championing. I think it's brilliant. It says something new about disability, and I think it's also just very funny, and fascinating and well put together. So I would love more people to talk about that. That's kind of the big one for me. Mostly though, I'm very unoriginal. And I think part of that is because this year was very weird. There were really only a couple movies that I think people have really talked about, and I don't necessarily know if we'll get something that's very far out of left field. I think most of what we'll see is stuff that we've been seeing, Amelia Perez and Honora and Conclave, which, 2 out of 3 of those movies are fantastic. So I'm excited to see them, but I don't necessarily know if we'll get anything that is very surprising. I think the most surprising movie we could probably expect this year is, if like The Substance gets nominated for Best Picture. I think that would probably be the most like weird thing that would happen.
Can you talk a little bit about, like, because we've had this conversation, the importance of studying film history and just having a big knowledge of films, especially in our line
Yeah,
of work?
I mean, I don't necessarily, there's distinctions that I make when it comes to people that write about entertainment just because the landscape is so varied. I separate film critics from film bros. A film critic is a person that takes a chance on anything, wants to, really analyze film, and find new ways to look at it and express it to people and report on it. A film bro is a person that just really wants you to buy their opinion and only their opinion. And they have a couple movies they champion, and that's it. And if you don't like them, then there's something wrong with you. And that group is very, very well represented in the landscape. But as I've noticed, the relationship to cinema in general, out even just outside of entertainment journalism, is changing. Most people under the age of 30, your generation, are not watching movies. They're watching maybe stray clips on TikTok, or they're seeing, small little gifs of something on Instagram, and it's from a movie that's maybe 30, 40 years old, and they think that's interesting, and they'll watch it in pieces and they'll discover it, which is why if you look at Netflix most watched list, there's always a movie that's like at least 5 or 10 years old where that's number one, because people are just now discovering it through the algorithm. And if film criticism is going to survive, it definitely needs to have younger blood. But the question is, if they're only watching movies from, the current day, or if they're not watching movies from the current day, but they're watching just stray stuff from 15 years ago on TikTok, the pool of influence gets very small. And so there is this need to understand that you don't really know where film has gone. You don't really know where film has been until you know where it's come from. You don't know where it's going if you don't
Yes.
know the past. And I think that's a huge thing, and when you bring that up, that's a controversial statement because people say, oh, you're gatekeeping. You only want people to watch Orson Welles and Citizen Kane and, Truffaut and Bergman, and that's not it at all. But, if you go to a hospital and you have a doctor, you would hope that he knows the history of medicine, and he knows the basics.
Right.
I think the same thing should be here. I'm not saying that a person who is a film critic should know every movie, both domestic and international. I certainly do not. But if I were to watch something like Anora, and I know what Sean Baker is using with screwball comedy, I can understand and tell people that that movie works because he's using the tradition of the screwball. And, Mikey Madison's character is very much like a Barbara Stanwyck, and this is how Barbara Stanwyck influenced this performance. I mean, film is a continuum. The culture influences the films, and the films influence the culture, and every single person, is influenced by something that came before them. There's a reason your Scorsese's and your Tarantinos put out lists of the movies that influenced them and that they grew up loving, because it plays in their work. So yeah, I definitely think that, especially if somebody wants to be a film critic or a film journalist, it it's required in some way for you to foster and go beyond movies, from when you were born, and that's all you're watching. It definitely requires an interest in not just watching the films themselves, but reading, about why French New Wave is important to film, or why Italian neorealism is such a big thing, or why the screwball comedy in America works. It's all about emphasizing why the films of today are using certain techniques.
What are some films that inspired you? What inspired you to want to get into this?
Gosh, I mean, my house is a very movie centric house, so I grew up watching Disney movies. The Little Mermaid was probably, the first movie that I grew to appreciate. There's movies where I definitely relate to characters, so, My Girl is a huge influence, but it wasn't really until I got to high school that I started to understand kind of the impact that cinema could have in a different way, beyond just liking characters. So, the movie that I always say is the one to blame for why I am the way that I am and why I decided to get into entertainment is Almost Famous. In that movie, he wants to be a rock journalist, and it's very much about kind of the hedonism of wanting to capture a bygone era, and just Cameron Crowe gets me. So that's definitely kind of the launch pad. But just taking film classes in high school and watching stuff like Anna the Thousand Days, or Singing in the Rain. I mean, a lot of those movies are ones that made me just want to consume more and learn more. So those, those are definitely big ones in my life.
Yeah, totally. I love that. And like since getting into film journalism, can you tell me about like a favorite day or a favorite like encounter you've had?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think the one, next to Sebastian Stan, which is always going to be fun. The one I always go back to is, I wrote a very small little piece on a site that I think is now defunct. About Sofia Coppola and the Beguiled movie, the remake that she was doing. And I wrote this very small little piece talking about how, I think she understands why this movie's so important. She's going to be great, and just did it for a very minute amount of money, if any. I don't even know if I got paid for it. But I did it, and I just kind of went on living my life. And her manager saw it and emailed me and said, "Well, do you want to come to LA and interview her?"
Wow.
And I thought it was a joke at first. I was like, "This is some sort of human trafficking thing. Like they want me to come down to LA
Oh wow.
and they're gonna put me in the trunk of a car or something." But no, they were legit. And I flew down by myself to Los Angeles, saw the movie in my first screening room, Universal screening room, which is great, all by myself. I could have whipped my phone out and probably filmed the whole thing if I wanted, but I did not.
Wow.
And I went to the Beverly Hills Hotel and had breakfast with her. And it was probably the weirdest moment of my life because I had never interviewed anybody of that significance before. I'd interviewed people, in the classic film world. It's not the same thing. And it was just a very surreal moment of my life getting to eat a very expensive salad. Because I think maybe it was brunch. Very expensive salad with Sofia Coppola. And I run into her in other places, and she knows who I am, which is very cool. But yeah, that's definitely the day that I was like, nothing's gonna get better than this. And I mean, I'm sure there are other moments after that, but that's the one that sticks in the head.
Well, that's incredible. Yeah, the early ones are also like special because it's you're like, what is going on? What is this? You're just kind of like, this is a whole new level. So as we are getting towards our final minutes, um, I have some silly questions. You won't get in trouble for any of
Sure.
these. They're not really film related. Actually, the first one is. The first one is. Do you have any weird but delicious movie snack combos?
No, I'm pretty basic. I'm usually when I go places, everybody knows that Kristen needs M&Ms, plain, not peanut. So those are my go-to. Occasionally I will do popcorn, but yeah, I'm pretty bland when it comes to snacks. Just because I think I just need something I can throw in my mouth while I'm watching, something that doesn't take focus away.
I do gotta say, one of my like favorite memories together is I got to sit next to you in that Barbie screening, which
Oh
that was amazing. But I just remember seeing you pull out M&Ms during the
yeah.
movie, and I
I
was just
usually
like,
always have M&Ms
that.
on me, some form.
I was just like, that is genius. I've never like done that, and I just that was great.
I travel all the time with snacks, so yeah.
As you should, amazing. And lastly, what are you enjoying right now?
Oh my gosh. I mean, film wise, I mean, I love Criterion Channel, so they have more Cameron Crowe movies that I will probably be watching this month. If we're talking new releases, I mean, it's all about Enora and Conclave. My soul belongs to Conclave, my heart belongs to Enora. And then if, just in general, I mean, I'm trying to read more books, and write another book. So there's a lot going on. So I definitely am thankful for the combination of Criterion Channel and TCM, and the fact that January is a historically slow month. So I don't have to worry about new releases just yet.
Yeah, and so we are at the turn of the new year. It is January. Do we have any work manifestations that we want to put out there into the world?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'd like to finish a book. That's always a perpetual thing. I mean, I have no choice. I have to, but I would like to put that out in the world that I would like to finish it. I keep saying I would love to write a Criterion Channel essay, or Criterion Disc essay. I haven't done that yet, so I would like to cross that off my bucket list. And who knows? I would love to be published in Vanity Fair. They're the one site that I don't think I've cracked yet, next to like the newspapers. So that would be great. But it's 25, which is going to be a weird month. So any money from the film journalism world would be nice.
And you heard it, Vanity Fair, Criterion, hire Kristen. She's great. Kristen, you're one of the first. You are the first friend I made as like a journalist in this business. So it's just so cool to get to see all the awesome stuff you do and just to be connected this whole time. You're my first guest on this radio show. Like, thank you so much for your time today, and thanks to all of you for tuning in to my interview with Kristen Lopez. Kristen can be found on social media at Kristen Lopez 88, and you can read her work on Substack. So head over to thefilmmaven.substack.com to read Kristen's film criticism. I can be found on social media at Georgie Writes on all platforms. That is Jorgie Writes, like writing an essay. See you guys next week.